I was fortunate enough at the age of 19 with a failed suicide attempt. And the whole reason my life changed was one of those individuals had a circumstance with their own family and had received training on how to intervene. And as the needs just kept coming and coming and not seeing positive results within our space, despite more resources than ever being available, it became clear that we had to do something different. And that's where the idea of Project 55 was born. 55% of people struggling with mental illness aren't receiving the help they need. We can tackle it, and we have a way to do it and a way for insurance organizations to lead the charge there.
Hi, I'm Brenden Corr,
And I'm Justin Goodman with Project 55.
and this is the future of insurance.
Hi guys, good to have you on and talk about something that is incredibly important. I think a lot closer to home for a ton of people who would never talk about it or don't feel like they could talk about it, and that's why it's important that we do. But I'd love to hear about the two of you and Project 55, and we'll talk about this issue that's going on. But Brenden, maybe you start off real quick. Who are you and what are you doing here?
Yeah, Brian, thanks, man. Nice to see you again. I'm Brenden Corr, and let's see, I've been in the insurance industry for almost 4 years now. Worked previously at Loss Run Pro, kind of helped take them to market. We specialized in kind of accessing loss runs for the independent channel and how producers could get those as a part of, either a renewal process or potentially prospecting a new customer. And Justin and I met, gosh, almost we embarked on this project almost a year ago. I think it was February of 2024 that we actually he came with this idea of Project 55 that we're going to discuss today. But as a part of my journey, I'm here today because I got sober 5 years ago. It was a pivotal moment in my life, kind of changed the trajectory of my career, where I live, but also kind of just the overall aspect of my mental health and well-being. And so when Justin came with this idea of Project 55 and kind of changing how mental health is viewed in the industry, I jumped at the opportunity to be a part of it.
Well,
So
and
that's kind of what got me here.
you talking about your sobriety story is how the other reason why you're here, because that stood out to me. I was watching a session that you were doing on that, and I appreciate the
Yeah.
openness about it. But that there's sort of a theme to this that of why the three of us are talking here, but this openness about things that are tough that people are facing, especially in our industry, but obviously more broadly, that we don't talk about that we need to. So I appreciate your openness in that respect and being willing to come here. Um,
Yeah.
and Justin, how about you?
Yeah, so I'm a third generation insurance brat, and I've done every role within an agency and had my own agency, sold my own agency. I also specialize in onboarding and training other insurance nerds on the agency side of the equation through Total CSR. And actually, how Project 55 came about was my own struggle with mental health over the years and the need as I saw arise over time within the agency space of organizations that were struggling to meet the needs and really even have a conversation with those on their team. And for myself, I was fortunate enough at the age of 19 with a failed suicide attempt where I had two fraternity brothers step in and one save the day, but two have a real talk with me. And the whole reason my life changed was one of those individuals had a circumstance with their own family and had received training on how to intervene.
Oh,
And as I thought full circle moving forward, and as the needs just kept coming and coming and not seeing positive results within our space, despite more resources than ever being available, it became clear that we had to do something different. And that's where the idea of Project 55 was born, which is really 55% of people struggling with mental illness aren't receiving the help they need. We can tackle it, and we have a way to do it and a way for insurance organizations to lead the charge there.
so this is first of all, I appreciate you sharing that. Obviously, both of you shared some pretty personal and um, things that I think a lot of people will have in their own story and would never talk about, whether it's themselves or someone close to them. So definitely appreciate that. On a lighter side, Justin, I think this is the first time I've had someone on the show who didn't say like I got into insurance by accident. And I go, unless your parents were agents, that's everyone's story. You're the example I keep talking about as the unless. So it's good to actually have that play out. You're proof that my story of the non-accidental insurance is a real thing. But the mental health it's a massive thing. And it's so taboo. You can't talk about it. You can't admit it. And we're not, not that it's okay in law enforcement or the military or something, but I understand in those extremely high pressure life or death situations where people are afraid to talk about it, they should be able to need the help desperately, probably even more so. But this is insurance. This is not, we're not on the firing lines. We're not going into war zones. We do have the space to talk about these things and be more honest about them and get the support we need. And yet we don't, especially in the US. I mean, I share with you guys working for British carriers, go across the pond, and it was very different there. Still could be better, but you could talk very openly. I mean, people did. They would have people present about taking time off for mental health and the support they got from their company, from their manager, managers reaching out proactively. Why don't we have that going on here? And I feel like that's sort of the spirit of what you guys are working on. Is that right?
Yeah, I would agree. And I think the challenge stateside is the multifaceted. Number one, on the agency side of the equation, we don't typically have the traditional HR roles.
Yeah.
So many agencies start off as family agencies. Now they may get acquired and then roll into big corporate, but usually it's the agency principal who used to be a producer. And the reason he became a principal was because he was good at selling, not managing people.
Yeah.
And so you have basically agency owners and small agencies and even mid-sized agencies that they don't have formal management training and don't have even mental health training on how to step in there. At the
Yeah.
larger corporations, yes, they have more resources available, but at the same time, we onboard for mental health like it is a 5-second blip in the onboarding journey. And at no point do we make the credibility of the organization as someone who cares about mental health a priority, nor do we provide resources, nor do we guarantee anonymity. And then when you look at the carrier side or field adjusters, et cetera, there's a whole different set of stressors that take place there. And even with the resources that are out there, at the end of the day, there's not enough lay people that are trained to step in when someone's struggling. Because what happens is Billy is struggling and I don't know what to say. I don't have the words. So it's better I say nothing and I just give him his space to breathe.
Yeah.
When in fact, Billy is hoping that someone will just take an interest and listen.
Yeah.
And so those are some of the things out there. And then part of the reason we have such a big problem in this industry, well, it's really a stateside problem, is there's not enough mental health professionals out there to treat everybody. And
Yeah.
in fact, even if there were, people can't afford them. And even if you can afford them, the average wait time to get into a mental health professional is 4 to 6 months. Well, those in crisis can't wait 4 to 6 months.
Yeah.
So that's a lot, but that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I mean, you guys are both coming from the agent perspective, and there's pressures in that setting, commission based, production based, et cetera, that definitely contribute to these things. I'm coming at it from a claims perspective, and look, there's an analog in every functional space, in every role across the industry. But I'm thinking about that person who wakes up in the morning, on the front lines handling claims with the intention of like, I'm here to put people's lives back together when something terrible's happened. And on the other end of the call is someone who's been told, your insurer's here to screw you over. They're looking for every, nook and cranny to have a gotcha and say, no, it's not covered. And so they've come like, with their dukes up, ready to hit you in the face when you're trying to be helpful. And it's one thing to be not appreciated. It's another to be, when you're trying to be helpful, to be treated like, you're the enemy. That's even worse. And so we hear this a lot in the claims side where people are getting smacked in the face when they're reaching out their hand to be helpful. And that's doubly hurtful. And they're burning out and they're leaving. And maybe they're going on to something that makes them happier and they're not feeling that way anymore, but they're dealing with something the whole time that we didn't have to lose the staff and we didn't have to have that person go through what they're going through, this whole time because you didn't know what to say or how to handle it. And Brenden, we've talked about like that then impacts how they're handling those situations. Maybe the situation wouldn't have been one if they weren't going in with that trepidation and they end up kind of making it, self-fulfilling prophecy because they've gone in kind of angry or scared or nervous or whatever, trip up on their words, don't handle it the way they needed to, that if they had the support, maybe it never would have escalated in the first place.
Yeah, and I think it gets back to so much of just like kind of, the goal with some of these pieces and resources that we're hoping to is to lay the groundwork so that not only the employee has the resources, but then they also know that the employer has similar resources. And then in that case, then they know that maybe it is a safe space that they can go to their manager and say, hey, I have a very challenging client. I'm feeling a little anxious about the upcoming conversation. You know, I'm not familiar with that space, but I can envision what some of those conversations look like and how they go, and that they happen so frequently. But if they aren't feeling supported, and maybe they're bringing something in from the outside, right? Their own family issue, like then they're going to react differently on that phone call or in that email. So if a manager has the same tools and resources and can, as Justin said earlier, notice or maybe say something to Billy, and then that puts Billy at ease, and then that conversation changes. It's finding that synergy between the employee and employer so that everybody feels supported with the right resources.
And this is what you guys are working on is it's not the support for the employee, or not that you're against that, but it's the training, the education, the tools for the employer to have a staff that is primed to watch for this and to know what to do and to be that support. It's like the teaching someone to fish kind of situations. I mean, Justin, it's akin to what you experienced when you were 19 with fraternity brother who understood what to do and how to respond. That's what you're trying to build, right? Is that awareness and capability? Is that correct?
Yeah, to simplify it, there's a paint by numbers approach that can be taken to step in when someone's in need. We're not training full-time lay counselors, but there's a space in between where you can be able to receive the information and someone's struggling, listen to them, empathize with them, provide them strategies, tools, tips, and redirect to the appropriate resource, i.e., if someone starts talking self-harm, we can direct them a certain spot. If
Yeah.
they're looking for additional therapeutic help, we can refer them there. It's being able to hold that line and giving people the tools and the confidence to do it. So, case in point, you talked about adjusters and field adjusters. So, I was in Katrina, I was in New Orleans right after Katrina hit, and meeting with families and experiencing that full on trauma that they were going through, and hearing those stories and being at a loss for words. I've also been in war torn countries after those atrocities and had those similar struggles. We lack the words to say. We are going to provide everyone with a paint by numbers approach with very specific examples, verbiage to use, not to use, and a decision tree of when to move off of something, when to move on to something. And by the end of this 6.5 hour training, you will be equipped to have these conversations like you never thought possible. And at the same time, you'll have all the downloadable resources because you're not going to memorize all this overnight. That the next conversation you have, you can be prepped and ready because you can review the material ahead of time so you can be effective and stepping into that conversation.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that the reasons behind someone's struggle could be work related, may not be. And we're talking about a lot of the work related side, but it could be divorce, the health of a loved one, any number of financial troubles at home, whatever it might be. Um, and sometimes managers will feel like I can't ask them about that. That's not my business. So that's a line we're not supposed to cross. So to have some clarity on how do you navigate these things and sort of like the decision tree and the tools for how to go about that, I think could be really helpful because there's probably a lot of people who are aware that something is wrong there, but it's taboo for me to cross that line and engage about it. But look how it's spilling. I mean, we're not, Brenden, we've talked about this. Like, you don't go home, walk through the door, and all your issues from work are gone. You're a person, they're still with you. And you don't come into work and all the issues from home are gone. Like, just because you
Right.
change doors. If you change doors these days, lots of people still working from home.
Yeah.
We're dynamic people. Like, we bring all this stuff with us on both sides. And so we can't, as a manager, you can't just observe, like, I know there's something going on there. I can't ask about it. I can't engage about it because then I'm crossing this kind of HR line we're not supposed to cross. And so this person's just going to suffer and
Yeah.
unnecessarily.
Yeah. And I mean, and the paint by numbers is certainly it's a starting point for within an organization, right? But to your kind of question earlier is, you know, yes, it's designed to also change the workplace, but employees also support other employees, right? If a husband or wife passes and then, again, Billy comes back to work, how do those employees in that kind of group or, in the office space react to that? What do they
Yeah.
say? How do they engage? But then also, if we take it one step further, if we can start to lay the groundwork with individuals within the workplace, they can also now have those same conversations with their loved ones, maybe at home. So it gives them a better understanding of a child's, a teenager's reaction or a
Mm,
husband's reaction. Maybe it helps them to have different conversations or to express themselves in a different way. And then they go to bed and then they wake up in a different mood. And then so they come to work in a different mood, right? So
yeah.
I think the ripple effects are far greater, but with the focus being in those day-to-day interactions and giving people the tools to understand how to communicate effectively, because the fact that you have to congratulate me on talking about my sobriety is pretty wild, right? Like, not everybody wants to share it, but why is it that is so taboo or that we
Yeah.
have to, you know, I share it because I'm an extrovert and I'm probably weirder than most people, but it should be okay for people to share that more openly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so I mean, I'm curious, where's this at and where does this go? Because we're talking before things are fully released and the training is live. So is that kind of the next step? And like, what are you working towards and getting there? And then how do we move forward? And I'm thinking really for people listening or watching is if they're curious about like, well, I could benefit from this, or I could be a part of this or help with these efforts. How do I get involved or avail myself of this opportunity or bring it into my workplace? Like, where are you in that journey to getting this out there? And how could someone who's listening right now get involved if that's what you're looking for?
Yeah, so I'll take the training component. So
Okay.
I'm knee deep in development right now on the training. We hope to have our mental health first responder training launched some point in April 2025. Again, everything always takes a bit longer than we think, but I think we can hit that target. Um, but where we're going with this is I think the insurance community is the greatest distribution network I can think of. And the goal is on the agency side of the equation to get as many people trained this year and next year as possible with the knowledge that if we can get a foothold in all these agencies, guess what all the agencies have? They have business customers. And guess what we can do? We can then have them be the distribution network to all of their business customers and say, by the way, this free training is available to all of you as well.
Yeah.
And so we can then penetrate all of those businesses as well. Um, so the goal is get this out, make it available for free, but also we have an online community component where you can just access the resources. So, for example, project55.org is where you can go and get all the information. Our online community, it's free to join. We'll have a lot of relevant resources, and we're going to continue to build that content library and activities and events taking place within there. But we really hope to gain the traction both in awareness side and then the execution and getting these people trained, that it really becomes not a matter of if somebody within an organization is going to be trained, but when they are. And my ultimate goal would be to change how we onboard and hire when it comes to mental health, and then create a different outcome and leverage every resource at our disposal. And again, there's a place for all of us who aren't trained professionals. And by the way, on the training course, I am working with trained licensed professionals that do this day in and day out. It's not just Justin's ideas that are coming up in his head,
Yeah.
but there's a space for us and we can do something. We can make a massive difference. And the number of people, when I spoke at AppliedNet, that came up to me that had lost a loved one to taking their own life this past year was staggering. Out of a conference of
Yeah.
4,000 people, there was 5 separate people that came up, and that's a massive number. And so there's a real opportunity to do something different that's needed, and do so in a way that all it will cost people is some time.
Yeah. So people can go to project55.org today. That's already, even though the training's not live yet, depending when people are listening to this, but there is a way for people to get involved and be part of the community now.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll kind of speak on just a real quick high level of the community. It's
Yeah.
a so everything there is live, and just from my own personal, I'm a hey, I'm gonna put it out there. Everything I wear it on my sleeve, but knowing what has helped me along my journey, and this isn't for everybody, but when you don't have resources, mental health can be a very lonely journey. And so many people don't share with loved ones, they don't share with their coworkers, they don't share with their managers, certainly. So where do people go? Well, as a part of my journey, I learned through, kind of the 12-step program, but just how important community was. So one of the aspects of Project 55, as Justin alluded to, is a community section. That is up and running. So we do have all of the resources, podcasts, books, literature that people can access. But then we also have a place where people can come and they can engage with other like-minded individuals. So, Bryan, you could log in and you could say, hey, I have been struggling with my drinking lately. I'd like, I've been drinking at lunch during the work week. I'd love some ideas. Has anybody, and then other community members who maybe have either gotten sober or are also interested can chime in. So
Yeah.
it has a little bit of like a Reddit type feel, but so many people are afraid of that conversation with their kind of network because of looking weak.
Yeah.
But when we bring in people who maybe are a little, are a few steps removed, it seemingly is so much more helpful. And then you also realize that you're not alone and that,
Yeah.
so the conversations can develop organically with people posting, but it is already active, so people can go there, they can join. And that then of course leads us to then that April launch of the actual training program.
And is the community all insurance professionals, or it's open to anybody?
I mean, I would say right now it's mostly insurance professionals, but over the course of time, our goal is that this can reach whoever, and it should reach
Yeah.
whoever is needing the help that they are searching for.
Yeah. But at least today, if you were to come in, coming from this industry, those people may not be in your peer group, which is a good
Correct.
thing. They're not your coworkers. You don't want to be talking in front of them, but yet they're from your space and understand, like they get the context. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's the scariest part is like, I don't want to go to therapy. I got to explain out like, just having to go through the whole backstory and the whole kind of framing to everything, or they're not really going to get what my life is like. It's like, well, everyone's kind of in the same boat in this group, at least today.
Yeah.
Um, so they
Yeah, I had
get
a
that.
couple guys
Yeah.
from the claim side the other day who joined, and we were in there kind of engaging and chatting about how important something like this within that claims organization, which of course you're very familiar with, but those two individuals, were so excited about it because it is a place where they can come
Yeah.
talk about the daily struggles, but yet it's not necessarily with their direct manager or their direct colleagues, and they can just have a community of support.
Yeah. It's safe, but contextually, you still have the understanding, which just makes it that
Correct.
much easier. Yeah. And
Correct. Yeah.
hopefully takes away one more excuse for why people aren't seeking help. It's like, it's too much. It's too much time. I don't want to have to explain every, well, you don't have to do a lot of those things. So just come and talk to some people who are kind of like
Correct.
you. Yeah.
Or I would imagine that, let's say, we end up with, 5,000 members at the end of the year. My guess is that there's only probably, you know, 250 who might be actually really engaging. But like any platform on Facebook or Reddit or anything, there's going to be so many people who just, they never respond, but they learn from other people, right?
Yeah.
They see the conversation. Not everybody is as outwardly, as maybe I am, and I'm willing to share things, but that they signed up and that they're watching and, kind of listening from afar is almost just as important.
Yeah. The term's lurking, which sounds terrible, but can be
Yeah,
in a good way too. They just
totally.
knowing like people could be taking real value from, some people's willingness to speak openly about it. And just because they
Totally.
don't post doesn't mean that they're not better for being there.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, I appreciate the openness from both of you and the fact that you didn't just stop there, like this is my story and happy to share about it, but it's also, and what can we do for others because of that? That's a a second step that a lot of folks don't take. So thank you to the two of you for starting to make that move and catalyzing it, and for sharing about it today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, Brian. Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having us on.